Thank you everyone so much for joining. Keith, if you'd like to welcome everyone as well. Keith Bishop is our 2020 affiliate chair, and he is with Old Republic Home Protection. Thanks, Keith.
You're very welcome. Thank you, of course, Jody. Thank you, SCORE, for allowing us this platform to reach out to our network partners, our real estate agents. So thank you all very much for attending today. Yes, again, I'm Keith Bishop with Old Republic Home Protection. I'm the 2020 chair. We have the privilege of having Jonathan Wyant, who is our 2021 chair, being the lead today. We'd probably like to start off this morning to give honor to our country and obviously all the people that have fought for our country and our rights. So if you can all join me into the Pledge of Allegiance. I think we have the flag up now. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, excellent. Well, thank you all very much for being here today. I mean, it's an honor that we have a great panel of professionals here today. So we thank them for being here. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Jonathan Wyant from the best bank in town, Bank of the West. Right, Jonathan?
Thanks so much, Keith. That was a stellar introduction, sir.
Yeah,
and Jody as well. All right, you guys, well, let's kick this thing off. Long-awaited Brunch and Learn. Welcome everybody to this one, courtesy of the Santa Clara County Association of Realtors. Are we headed towards a COVID foreclosure meltdown? Again, my name is Jonathan Wyant. I'm a loan officer with Bank of the West. I am this year's vice chair for the SCORE affiliate committee, and next year I am taking over as the chair. So as we all know, the first case of COVID came about in November of 2019 in Wuhan, China. And subsequently, California Governor Gavin Newsom ordered that shelter-in-place ordinance on March 19th, 2020. Now, if we do the math, that is just over 6 months ago. So myself and our awesome speakers today, we have a lot of good data points. We're going to help you understand where we came from, where we are now, and what might be coming up in the future, specifically to the real estate market. And of course, you know, are we heading to a bunch of foreclosures coming up? What does that mean? So when the shelter in place came about, not a lot of businesses could operate the way that they could have before. So people lost their jobs, they took serious pay cuts. Of course, we have health concerns, and the GDP and the economy as a whole is really taking a dive here. U.S. lawmakers reacted pretty darn swiftly, and I have to say I'm real happy about this because they came out with extensive stimulus packages to try to help the U.S. kind of weather the storm on this one. So stimulus checks, payment protection program, SBA loans, economic disaster relief loans, eviction moratoriums, early withdrawals from retirement accounts, and even mortgage forbearance programs. What is a foreclosure? We all kind of know what it is. Let me go through the steps with you of what a foreclosure looks like. If a homeowner has either a purchase loan or they may be refinanced, or they took cash out, if they are leveraging their home with a loan and they miss 3 to 6 payments, then the lender will record a public notice of default for that house. This is where the investors get to take a look and see, oh, hey, you know, maybe there's some, you know, something for me to do here. Maybe I should take a look at this property. The preceding 1 to 4 months is a pre-foreclosure period where the lender can offer financial counseling sessions to the home buyer or the homeowner, maybe work on a repayment plan or loan modification, or possibly a short sale where they sell the house and the lender offers to accept lower than the loan amount to settle that debt. Maybe better for them than just to go into foreclosure. If nothing changes, then the lender will set an auction date, and all of the bidders will come on, and they basically sell the house the highest bidder. If there is no highest bidder, or if there's no qualified buyer for this property, then in post foreclosure, after the auction, the bank will take possession of the property. It becomes a bank-owned property, and they basically go through a different process to try and offload that property, maybe fix it up, things like that. So obviously, the dominoes have started to fall in the U.S. and the economy and world economy as a whole. people scrambling to take care of themselves, take care of their jobs. And so again, it's my job and our three amazing speakers here today to help you understand what happened, where we are, and where we're going. What are the pitfalls? What are the opportunities? What should we prepare for next? Do we need to go back to the stores and get toilet paper all over again? Front load on that. Are we headed towards a COVID foreclosure meltdown? So there's going to be a lot of information today, guys. There's a lot of people on this Zoom call, so welcome. Feel free to take notes and also write down any questions. We're going to open it up for maybe 10 minutes of questions at the end, and we want to get to everybody. A brief intro to the speakers in order of appearance today. We have Joshua Borger, attorney and partner with Berliner Cohen LLP. Elizabeth Castillo, title expert with Fidelity National Title, also a part of our board. And Ashley D. Gonzalez, Esquire, partner with Brewer, Offord, and Pedersen LLP. So up next here is Joshua Borger, again, a partner at the law firm Berliner Cohen LLP in San Jose. He practices commercial and civil litigation in a variety of areas, including real estate, unfair business practices, breach of contract, trademark, trade secrets, employment, and insurance coverage in litigation. He does it all, ladies and gentlemen. Joshua, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for having me. So why don't we give a little lay of the land, a little more about how we got to where we are, especially through the courts. So the governor declared the state of emergency. But the one who sets the rules for the courts is the Judicial Council. It's a subset of the judges who vote and decide the rules. They declared a state of emergency because when the emergency was declared by the governor, the courts were not exactly sure what they were supposed to be doing. So the Judicial Council had an amendment to our existing rules for the courts, and they said no foreclosures, and no kicking people out of the properties, nothing for until 90 days after the governor lifts the stay. And what that was meant to be was a reprieve. They don't want miles of people in line, everyone's in a panic, and the courts can't get anything done. So they were giving the legislature time to figure this mess out. So there were no foreclosures and no terminations of tenancies for this time. The legislature had a few bills that went around. There was one that we thought was going to be passed in June. It was stuck in committee. It didn't actually get voted down. It got stuck in committee and died on the vine, if you will, because nobody could get it out. That was another way of voting it down. Some interests said it was way too tenant friendly. So eventually in August, the Judicial Council voted again, and they lifted the stay. What they said is the legislature, instead of legislating, has decided to give it to the courts, and that is not our job. We were trying to give you a period to do something, and you didn't do it. So they voted in August and said, effective September 1st, our emergency rules are going to be lifted. So you can foreclose, you can terminate tenancies, do what you will, it's going to go back to normal. That presented a problem. And so the legislature then went into high gear and they passed a bill the day before that happened. And I think Ashley will probably address that bill because it addresses residential tenancies. It does not address commercial. And so then the issue becomes commercial is the way it was before. And so you are going to have a whole new set of issues. Is it back into the setting as if COVID had never happened? I don't think it is. I think it's going to, here's what I did. I went back and looked at the case law going back through World War I, because COVID is the equivalent. In law, we draw analogies. It is the equivalent of being in a war. And what happened during World War I, during World War II, during epidemics, during other analogous situations, which thank God don't happen very much, but what did the courts do? Because that is what lawyers are going to have to go back in because there's no statute dealing with these issues for commercial tenancies. And here in reading the tea leaves, and I published on this, you can go on my profile and click on it if you want, is what I think is going to happen. Hopefully, I'll say this objectively from all sides. Certain landlords are now, if it's a commercial tenant, going to want to start eviction proceedings. Some may not, because you're really not going to find many commercial tenants out there. So, and sometimes it's going to be that the tenant simply wants out because they don't want to be stuck in this lease. They don't want to wait 3 years and have somebody sue them. So in that instance, the commercial tenant can sue for what's called declaratory relief. You are going to court and you're saying, give me a declaration that this lease is null and void. You can do that if you want the certainty. Or the landlord can sue you, which would be for a breach of contract. But the arguments on both sides is going to come down to an old doctrine called commercial frustration. And what that means is, I entered into this contract, we had a contract to do X, to lease property, if you will. We'll talk about, put it in the terms of restaurants. I couldn't operate it. I was frustrated because of stay-at-home orders. There were governmental orders that prevented me from doing it. As a result of that, as the argument goes, one side is going to say the contract was terminated automatically, essentially by the government, and the other side is going to say, no, that doesn't apply here. But that's what the arguments that are going to come about. And this is going to play out in various ways. The first thing you're going to want to do on either side to see this is look at the lease. People have been calling me saying, my lease says the purpose was to operate a restaurant. I couldn't operate a restaurant, therefore I'm out, right? No, the law is never that simple. Or it wouldn't have taken us 3 years to get through law school. Can't be that simple. And hundreds of years wouldn't allow it to be. So you're going to look at it. Every lease has a purpose. That doesn't mean you have to do that. That means it's a purpose. You can do anything reasonable in that space. If it says the purpose is a restaurant, that doesn't mean it has to be a restaurant. You're going to do something reasonable within that. So for example, you go to the tenant goes to the landlord and says purpose was a restaurant, I couldn't operate it, therefore I'm out. No, the landlord's going to turn around and say, that's a purpose. You could reasonably do something else. Not everything was shut down due to the stay-at-home, and therefore the lease didn't terminate. I would expect the landlord to win. Now, if it says you have to do this, and you couldn't do that as a matter of law, that is an entirely different situation. Then you're going to have a stronger argument for commercial frustration. Now, the aspect that doesn't come up very much, but came up here, is what happens when the government interferes with your contract. Going back, there was a case in World War I that people were citing to, that has come up actually in subsequent wars, and not actually right now, but that I expect to rear its head, where someone leased a neon sign they wanted to put up, a bar. And World War I, they said you can't put it up because there was a government rule that if you put that up, lights on at night, you were going to tell the enemy where the land was. So the person got sued because they weren't paying for the lease, and the court said no, the lease was terminated. You were frustrated. You couldn't do anything. It wasn't a sign. It was a neon sign. The whole point of neon is nighttime. And so you got no value out of that. So you were out. Put that in common terms here. Stay at home. If you couldn't operate, say, restaurant, if you couldn't do takeout, all you had was sitting in, and you couldn't operate due to the stay-at-home, you were going to argue that you are the neon sign case. Therefore, if the landlord comes after you, you're going to say, my lease was terminated back in the beginning of this, and I paid until, COVID, so there's no breach. These issues are important, especially because most of these leases are going to have attorney's fees provisions, so whoever wins is going to claim the other side has to pay their attorney's fees, so you really want to be right. But know that there are other cases out there. California Supreme Court from World War II, where someone was leasing property. It was a car dealership, and they said because of different rules dealing with how many cars you could make and sell, because cars and auto body parts were needed abroad, that they couldn't make as much profit as they wanted. They made profit, but not as much. California Supreme Court said commercial frustration doesn't apply. You made money. You just didn't make as much money as you wanted. Now that would be the equivalent today of takeout. You didn't have sit-in, but you had takeout. You were making money. So I don't think the court would allow that person to get out of that lease. I think they'll say the doctrine of commercial frustration doesn't apply there. So then going Now, moving forward a little more, the next question is going to be if someone said, well, I would have said if someone asked a month ago, which they did, well, I wasn't making much money during takeout. I probably wasn't even covering overhead. Shouldn't I just shut down? That remains to be seen what the court would have done. I think if you had done that and the court said, well, you kind of shot yourself in the foot on that one on purpose, I don't think the court would allow commercial frustration to apply. There's different doctrines, and one of which is you can't contribute to your own wrong. And I think in that instance, the court using equitable wouldn't have allowed that to work. The next issue people are going to have to come up with, that all of the arguments are, when the stay-at-home happened, did that terminate your lease or did it just stay your lease? If you couldn't operate for a couple months, did that terminate or did it just mean you didn't have to pay for those couple months? There is case law that would say strong case law, you didn't have to pay for those couple months. If you couldn't operate, it was stayed. There is case law that would allow you to argue that it was terminated even though it was temporary, because every word in the law means something completely different to a lawyer. And there is case law from World War I that they said there was called a submarine menace and someone wanted to get out of a contract. And they said, yes, it got you out because we know these wars aren't going to go on forever, but you can't ship your goods out there because of the submarine menace. And so even though that won't go out, that temporary menace, it's considered a permanent menace because we don't know when it'll end. And so you get out of the lease or you get out of that contract. So in this instance, just because it was temporary for a couple months with the stay-at-home, I expect a lot of arguments for whether that temporary became permanent under the law because of the uncertainty of when it would end. There's case law on both sides of that. In summary, these issues under commercial tenancies are going to have to play out in the court because they're not playing out by statute. They are going to have analogies for hundreds of years from embargoes, from wars, and it remains to be seen what is going to happen. But both sides have arguments, and both sides can pull the trigger by going to court first. Depending on the circumstance, you may want to sit or you may want to move.
Josh, thank you so much for that. It was very, very informative and interesting. And I tell you what, if I'm ever in a situation that I need legal help like this, I want you on my side. I want you to read the tea leaves and help me out to be on the right side of things, okay?
And tell you years and years of history. We'll have a beer and talk about it. I could go on for days.
I love it. Thank you, sir. Okay, next up, we have Elizabeth Castillo, a senior sales executive with Fidelity National Title in the Bay Area. Fidelity is a Fortune 200 company. Elizabeth launched her real estate career in the title insurance space in the year 2000. That eventually led to a 5-year endeavor as a home mortgage banker with Wells Fargo and Chase Bank. Soon afterwards, her expanding expertise in the home buying and selling process led her back to her profession as a business consultant for real estate professionals in Santa Clara County. Today, her clientele personally believes in her expertise that she provides, how she provides it, and the enormous benefit they receive from it. She is also active in various organizations, nonprofit and otherwise. Currently a member of SCORE, FAREPA, NAREP, and NORA. And on a personal note, she just celebrated her 25th wedding anniversary, all right, to her husband, Luis, and is a proud mother of 3 boys. Elizabeth, welcome back to the show.
Good morning, movers and shakers. I'm really excited to be here. And of course, thank you everyone for your business time this morning.
It's all you, Elizabeth.
Great. Well, we have a few questions prepared, but of course, there's a plethora of services. We want to be, when it comes to farming needs, which is your focused area of real estate marketing. So depending on the source, it's recommended up to 12 months, over a year to see any results. So if you are looking to become a neighborhood expert to be able to identify any of these properties that were aforementioned a little while ago, are they currently in notice of default? Any information, we are that data bank platform for you. Fidelity National Title does own Black Knight. So if you would like to have your access for that 24/7 anywhere in the United States, of course, we can provide that to you so that you can be prepared. when you are speaking to your prospects or clients or past clients. And so you're able to be that real estate expert when it comes to their property and how to assist them through this time frame, as was mentioned earlier, up to 180 days that they may be in default or more. So we do have, for illustration purposes only, we do have something that we can share with everyone. I think Jody has that ready to go. So what you can see here is the opportunity. So anything that has to do with ownership, the years of ownership of a property that is very specific to a particular subject address, of course, the information is available. Now, if you're looking for phone numbers or emails, anything like that, of course, you would have to pay for that. After 2009, it became an SB 133 violation to be able to provide that to you. But we, as a Fortune 200 company, do vet third-party vendors that are providing the information and are providing very successful turnaround, let's call it successful results for your real estate business. So what we can see here, that starting July 1st to yesterday's date, you can see that we had 36 properties. So imagine you would have access to any county that you're interested, or here in Santa Clara County, you can see specifically 36. So you could either think, oh, there's only 36, or you could have abundance thinking and say, wow, there's 36. I can micromanage that depending on your marketing plan, what anchor points you're going to use so that you're able to be the person that they think of, to be the expert, to guide them through the process, whether they decide to sell or they decide to, of course, save their property, depending on these special circumstances that all of us are experiencing here during this COVID-19 journey that we have. So that's some information there. I think the best way would be to have a one-on-one appointment with me so that I'm able, you and I can identify what's going to be the best information source for you so that you can be the most successful when it comes to any of your farming needs, which of course is your focused area, real estate marketing. So, please reach out to me. My information will be on the chat. And so we can make an appointment. It can be short, it can be on FaceTime, it can be like this on Zoom, and we'll make sure that it's a valuable time for you so that you can, especially with 2021 around the corner, many of the successful brokers that I know say if your business plan isn't ready to go in October, you're not going to be successful from the get-go in 2021. So as you get that ready and you want to identify these properties, the turnaround that you have in particular neighborhoods so that you can see if it's going to be a good area to farm or neighborhood to farm, then absolutely, this is the time to make that appointment, get yourself prepared. And, for those of you that are familiar with foreclosure radar, currently they're saying that there's over 209 properties. So, but again, we can discuss that on a one-on-one basis so that we can be a value add for you as you, succeed, thrive here as we wrap up 2020. But more importantly, let's think optimistic about our 2021 business. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Awesome. Farming definitely important for active listings, for bank owned, for foreclosures, for a lot of different things. And I got to tell you, Black Knight is one of my favorite data providers. They are big. They work with big real estate numbers, and that's what us, market professionals need to work with in order to make good decisions and help our clients make good decisions. All right. Next up, we have Ashley D. Gonzalez, Esquire, a partner and real estate attorney at Brewer Offord Pedersen LLP, a boutique real estate law firm located in Silicon Valley. Ashley helps property managers, real estate investors, landlords, and brokers with issues relating to partition actions, unlawful detainers, duty of care, disclosure, and other real estate legal issues. In 2020, Ashley was recognized by Super Lawyers as a rising star for real estate law in Northern California. Ashley, we are happy to have you on the show today.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen so we can go over some slides because there's a lot of content on my end with residential, as Joshua mentioned. So I'm going to go ahead and share. Okay. Okay, so as everyone may have heard, at the end of August, the governor passed AB 3088, It's also known as the COVID-19 Tenant Protection Act of California. And this plays a huge part as we're talking about foreclosures on these landlords where, you know, they rely on the rent to pay the mortgage for the property. Not every landlord that, you know, we service or we help and out there in California can have this back rent in their account to pay if the tenant doesn't pay. So a lot of them are relying on that month-to-month payment from a tenant. And when that doesn't happen, you know, they're sort of getting in a pinch right now, and they come to us to see what we can do to help them. So AB 38 changes a lot of that for landlords, and I just want to go over what you can do potentially to collect rent to avoid a foreclosure or becoming in default, and also protections that smaller landlords have under the act. So first, a lot of people ask me, is my property covered? Every residential unit is covered, and in most cases, short-term rentals. This surprises people a lot. That includes Airbnbs in some instances. There's some exceptions to that, but as far as the way to wrap your mind around it, it's all residential units. And then the second biggest question I get asked is, can I evict my tenant for non-payment of rent? The short answer is never good news for my landlords, but there is a procedure that you can do to try and get a tenant out or get them to pay rent. And this act has changed that. So the biggest one that was a big change was the notice to pay rent. It went from 3-day to 15-day, which is a huge jump. One important distinction to know when you're serving these notices, even before this act, is that it does not include weekends and holidays. So it's 15 business days. That could be 3 weeks, depending on when you serve it. You also must serve notice of the act and then a declaration form for them to fill out if they've had a hardship. And also, with our area being so diverse, if your lease was negotiated in a different language or has language in there that's native to the tenant, you need to serve the act in that language. So that's super important. And then for unpaid rent from March through August, can you evict for that non-payment of rent? The answer is no if the tenant signs a declaration of hardship under penalty of perjury. For missed rent September 1 through January, the answer is no if the declaration is provided. And for that time period, the act gives tenants until January 31 to pay 25% of the rent owed. So you may get a little bit, but certainly not the full amount. And then I've had some landlords serve notice and then come to me after the fact, unfortunately, for non-payment of other financial obligations, trying to do a workaround around the moratoriums or this act where they're serving notice for a pet feed, utilities, etc. The act specifically says that it covers all financial obligations, that is what is considered rent under the act. Next, recovering unpaid rent. If the tenant doesn't provide the declaration within the 15-day notice period, you can begin evicting for non-payment of rent on October 5th. So that's important to know. And then if they do return the hardship form for rent from March 1 through January, even if it's not a ground for eviction, technically that rent debt is going to be converted so where you can collect it in the civil court and also small claims. I thought this one was interesting in the act. This change they made, they eliminated the $10,000 cap in small claims court and also the number of claims a landlord can file. I think, you know, if you're a property manager, if you own several properties, I'm sure you've gone to small claims before and you're aware of the limit. That has been eliminated. So I think that's pretty helpful if you're trying to collect later on. And this can begin in March of 2021. So even though the limit has been expanded and the number of claims, you still have to wait quite a while to start that process. And then other evictions right now, beginning September 2nd, a few weeks ago, evictions for nuisance and other just causes other than non-payment of rent were allowed to continue. Do note, though, in San Mateo County, there was an order that was passed recently that put a stay on any unlawful detainers being filed until, I believe it's October 2nd. And in that order, they cited, effects from the fires and everything going on. They extended that from September 2nd for another month, partially due to their backlog, and then also people that were displaced due to the fires. So they gave tenants extra time, even for non-payment of rent or unrelated to non-payment of rent, excuse me. Another important distinction that the Act talks about: beware of the local protections. If a local protection is more protective of a tenant, usually that prevails. The Act gives leeway to that local protection if it's more protective of the tenant. And then this big one that a lot of people are upset about, but I understand the purpose. They fear retaliatory evictions from landlords. So the Act also expanded AB 1482 to all tenants until February 1. The previous exception or the just cause under AB 1482 for demolition and rehab is not permitted except for health and safety law compliance. So that's a big one. Single family and condos are usually okay to evict only if they are already exempt under 1482 previously, and they have a contract for sale, and the buyer intends to occupy the property. This is an exception to the expansion that I think was meant for people in contract when it passed. And then again, if you're able to evict under the permissible causes under 1482, even after the expansion, you do need to pay relocation assistance. So those are important things to remember. There's a lot of content on this page, but I'll go over it really quickly. These are the protections under the Act for homeowners and small landlords. They basically extended the anti-foreclosure protections in the Homeowner Bill of Rights. If you own 4 or fewer properties, whether they're owner occupied or not, and you've had difficulty paying your mortgage, the law offers protections. I think it was mentioned in the beginning that they need to contact you before they pursue a foreclosure to offer you options for forbearance. And then the Act prohibits dual tracking where it was previously allowed. And lastly, if you're denied forbearance under the Act, they have to provide you a detailed written explanation. How much relief that offers, we don't really know yet, but at least they have a duty to really explain why if you are denied protections. And my recommendations, if you're a landlord, property manager, don't sit back and wait. I know these law changes can be very discouraging and make it seem like you don't have any recourse. But I think that if the tenant isn't paying and you have a feeling that maybe they haven't been affected, they're taking advantage of the system or whatever's going on. I've had a lot of landlords offer discounts to the rent and things like that, which were absolutely necessary. But if you think that your tenant is just putting off the rent and maybe they haven't lost their job or something like that, you should serve them with notice. Put the duty on them to provide you with the declaration. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. At least then you would know for sure, and they have to put under penalty of perjury that they have had a hardship, and at least gets that process started. But be very careful with your notices. They're instituting $1,000 to $2,500 fines if you don't comply with the code. So be very careful. And then another reason why you shouldn't sit back and wait is the courts are very backlogged. I'm sure Joshua has experienced that as well. For instance, I filed an eviction in January and I just got a writ last week, gave it to the sheriff, and they told me they might be able to serve it by December. So, and that's just when I just finished from January. So if you start the process now, you're going to have to wait a while anyway, so you might as well get started if you can. And then again, amicable solutions are always favored. You might be able to work something out with your tenant, a cash for keys deal. You should always consider that. If you do need to get the tenant out, again, make sure you don't violate their rights. If you're obligated to pay relocation assistance, make sure that that is included in any cash for keys agreement. because you can get dinged for that, especially in San Francisco and other cities where that's required. And it's usually a larger amount than you think. So if you need legal advice on that, let us know. And then make sure you do a written agreement, because if you do reach a move out agreement with a tenant, you want to get that in writing. That way you have some recourse if they blow you off or if they don't move out. And that's all I have. I mean, we could talk about that for hours, but that's the general rundown.
Ashley, thank you so much. So very informative. All of the laws, all 10 laws. It begs the question. I was with the property manager the other day, and they were working with these tenants that they are paying their bills, but they're just not taking really good care of the property. Food everywhere, rats are starting to come in, things like that. So the property manager recommended to the homeowner that they offer cash for keys, because it's so difficult to get people out of the house right now by evicting them, but maybe you can entice them. Do you have anything to say on that matter?
On how to get the tenant to agree to a move out agreement?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like settling a court from what I could see.
yeah, honestly, everything's on the table at that point. I've had some landlords offer to pay the deposit and first month's rent on a new unit, a similar unit, maybe even helping them find a new place. If they know a broker, enlisting them to help them. It's really how much you're willing to offer. I think the only pitfall that I would really advise against is under offering. So in a lot of San Francisco properties, it could be 2-3 times the rent. So while you might agree to a $3,000-$4,000 move out payment, you could be severely undercutting what they're entitled to. So I think that the biggest thing is not under offering, but really it's, if the more creative you are and the more that you show that you do care about their relocation, a lot of people aren't going to put up too big of a fight. It's usually when they feel like they're being coerced, or you're threatening them or trying to backdoor them. So I think that's the biggest thing.
So what I'm hearing is lots of options. Be
Yeah.
creative.
Yeah.
Look at everything. Speak to a professional, and if you need a professional, speak to Ashley.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then my turn, folks. I'm actually pulling double duty today. I am the moderator, but I'm also going to act as a speaker. I have a lot of good information from the banks. I am a loan officer with Bank of the West. Been there for about 3 years now. Before that, I was with Wells Fargo in many different financial advisory positions, investments, insurance, cash management, such and so on and so forth. Over a decade now with mortgages. I graduated from Franklin University with a dual bachelor in business administration and financial management. What else here? And also, of course, I'm the vice chair this year for the SCORE Affiliate Committee and upcoming chair for next year. So I pulled together a whole lot of data points and things that I thought that were interesting that really lead into this question: are foreclosures coming? So first and foremost, again, going back to those stimulus packages, $1,200. Pandemic stimulus check was kind of nice. Everyone was kind of buzzing around. Oh, I can't wait for my check to come. I might need it, I might not need it, but at least it's there. But hey, that kind of stuff only lasts so long, right? It's a little Band-Aid that costs billions of dollars to set out, but and now it's over with. So we have to, look on for stimulus packages that are continuing on. In addition to that, there were still over 30 million Americans receiving regular state and federal employee unemployment benefits and pandemic unemployment benefits, according to the Department of Labor. They also, the federal government also allowed an extra $600 to those benefits, which stopped in July. So along with that and rent reductions, forbearances, the eviction moratoriums, things are still in place right now. We might not be giving it a whole bunch of money right away, but laws are still getting changed. Okay, these things will continue to affect how this whole foreclosure, if it's going to happen, will come out. And again, leading into that, U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. I pulled this the other day from California specifically. So back in February, before the shelter in place came out, our unemployment rate in California was 3.9%. In March, the average was 5.5, just a little increase. In April, 16.4. Okay, a huge jump. May, 16.4 again. Now, things kind of cooled off a little bit for June and July and went down to 14.9 and 13.9, but still we're over about 10% more unemployment than we were before this thing started. So this is the question, right? Is this amount of unemployment going to cause people to not be able to pay their bills and, you know, get into a foreclosure type situation? So it's not like we have 100% unemployment, okay? We're just 13.3. This is, I think, a doable situation for a lot. People can lean on families for help if they need to. And now that we're seeing less COVID cases, I heard the other day, forgive me if I'm got the colors wrong, but we're going from orange to purple on the map. And basically what this does is allows us to have more non-essential businesses open for business. So things are healing from where we came from. And according to data provider Black Knight Financial Services, again, Elizabeth, 46% of borrowers who obtained a forbearance actually made a payment in April. So half of them asked for it, all of them asked for, all the people that did ask for it, half of them still made their payment in April. But that did go down to 22% in May and then 15% in June. So what this tells us is that, you know, people are asking for the help. They didn't know how bad this thing is going to be. It could have been a much worse situation for everybody. So everyone's kind of holding on to all their pennies as much as they can. And I believe the average savings account for people in the US is about $2,000. So here in the Bay Area, where you have rents that are double, triple that, mortgages that are definitely double, triple that, it's good to, you know, for these people to save as much cash right now as possible. And with those forbearance programs, it's simple. You could take that 3 months of payments and just simply tack it on to the end of your mortgage. So you're still going to pay it. It's just when do you pay it? And, you know, it's good to kind of keep that those savings for right now. Speaking of forbearances, I pulled this information from Bank of the West specifically. The market that we are in, which is 13 states, West Coast, 7.7% of our market was in forbearance versus 3.7 in San Jose. So what this says to us, and we've done the numbers, people in San Jose have higher incomes, higher family incomes than other places in California, or the other 13 states that we're working in. So they need less forbearances. They were more comfortable weathering this storm with whatever cash they had in the bank. And the majority of loans in forbearance that were coming up on the 3-month period, which is over already. The rest are refinancing, which I'll talk about in a second. They're adding the missed payments to the end of the loan, or they're applying for another forbearance period because the initial stimulus package allowed for 2 or 3 forbearance periods if you needed. Interesting point specifically on foreclosures. FHA mortgage delinquencies hit a record high with the economy the way it is during COVID. FHA mortgages are given to people with low credit, low down payment, and low income. So if those homeowners are not working and they're already over leveraging themselves for this mortgage, those type of properties have a very high likelihood of going into foreclosure, okay, FHA mortgages. And again, kind of one point against the whole foreclosure Armageddon that we may be coming into. A record 1.7 million homeowners refinanced during this year's April through June quarter alone, which is more than double that took out fresh loans at the same time last year, even though the rates were still pretty darn good, according to Adam Data Solutions. And it's also, I think it's very important to know that when we think about our foreclosures coming, mortgage rates preceding times of economic turmoil like COVID or the 2008 financial crisis when the big banks were falling and several other times before that, they tend to stay pretty low to allow the people to have that confidence that they can do something meaningful. They can hunker down, they can lower their payment, or they can take the cash out and fix the house or make an ADU or whatever it is, be creative. And so we are foreseeing that the rates are going to stay pretty low until the next 2 or 3 years. Okay, we have a lot of work to do to get that unemployment rate down. So the rates should not be spiking up. Also, talk about an essential business. Okay, if one person does one loan, You've got a loan officer, you got an appraiser, you've got a title officer, you've got appraisers, inspectors, plumbers, contractors. You've got managers and people who send the wire transfers. Hundreds of people are involved in every transaction, and that keeps a lot of people employed. That keeps the GDP up, and hopefully a lot of these people are able to work remotely or in other safe, secure locations, so they continue to be able to work through all of this and keep the economy supported. All right, a couple last figures before Q&A session. The market, our market, Bank of the West, 0.08% were in foreclosures back in February. The same as right now. So nothing has changed as far as foreclosures are percent. San Jose is actually 0.11. It may seem like it's a higher number, but it's only because we weight these things by the loan amount. So loan amounts in San Jose are larger. If one, goes into foreclosure, then it's going to be heavier than 3, in Oregon, perhaps. Okay. So in summary, we've got some good, steady things happening in the U.S. Some people are still in trouble. Those FHA people. I think that are if they don't have family, if they don't have other people helping to work to pay bills, those people may be in specific trouble with regards to foreclosure. So there's always uncertainty, no matter what market we're in. Work with good professionals like the ones here that are speaking today. We aim to be well-informed, vigilant, and as optimistic as we can afford to be. Now I'd like to open up for a Q&A session to any of our speakers. And Elizabeth, maybe you want to start off on this one. You may have answered it earlier, but what is a farm and why is it highly recommended more than ever? And how can Fidelity Title be a resource partner when it comes to your farming needs? Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, thank you so much, Jonathan. I think I would echo what Jonathan was saying. This was more of a health crisis and financial crisis, such as the 2008 debacle. So keep that in mind. And, a lot of successful agents decided to look at this possible niche right around the corner and see how they can also be a resource to those individuals and, produce business that way. So I definitely would suggest to have in your inner circle the information. And I know you hear it all the time, knowledge is power. I definitely would recommend to get your farm more defined if you want to be the neighborhood export or such as a niche as this, and just get the information so that you can have more opportunities as you lead generate. And so the records are there and you can access them. So that's really great just from the get-go. Our customer service, if you give them a call, they can actually answer that for you right there on the spot. If the property is in default or if it's, bank owned. I mean, we can really define anything you want to know about any property.
I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. I see some questions on the chat box. Do you have the numbers on the recorded, publicized pre-foreclosure numbers? Again, those ones I did not pull because it's sort of like forbearance, right? Some of these people are keeping their cash for now and they're deciding, do I want to stay in this house or not? Do we have a different option? Let's be creative. Should we move to Missouri where properties are, $50,000? So those ones, just like forbearance, a bunch of people took them out. Maybe a bunch of people are in pre-foreclosure right now, but they're not actually going to make it. And if we do this or something like this, if you guys think this is a very interesting topic, welcome to have our guest speakers come back, jazz this up a little bit, and give you some more data 3 to 6 months from now, because that's really going to show us, if there's still a trouble with foreclosures. And Josh, let's go back to you. I don't have any extra questions for you, but given everything that was said today here, any other last thoughts?
Well, some people, I wasn't sure if it was being addressed to me of whether we're heading to this actual meltdown. I'm just a lawyer. I'm not an economist. But what I can tell you is that the issues are not going to be clear cut on the commercial side when you go to court. And I would very much anticipate the judges, including in the same county and in different counties, are going to go very different ways on the same issue. And so it would be impossible from a legal side to say X is going to happen. As my point of what I was giving you was there are a lot of factually intensive arguments. Now, when you have factually intensive arguments, until it gets teased out at the Court of Appeal, which will be years from now, that would indicate that you may not have this massive meltdown. You're going to have factually intensive issues, which means you're going to get opinions all over the place. And frankly, given what we're dealing with, you could have the same factual pattern. I still think you're going to have opinions in California all over the place. So until we figure this out, until some Court of Appeal issues opinions on this, and again, those courts in California could come out different ways. I can't tell you any more than the judges can right now how this is going to turn out in the courts. We're all just going to wait and see.
So it sounds like we still have some time to weather and just kind of wait and see.
On the commercial side, we're all going to have to tease this one out. It's not
Keep our ear to the
statutory.
ground.
I'm
Got it.
sorry?
Keep our ears to the ground, try to keep informed.
What Ashley was dealing with is statutory. On the commercial side, it is not. So we are dealing with common law, which means from the time the Normans hit England in a boat in the 11th century until now, people are going to be looking at case law. That's a long time. People are going to come out on that issue and those cases very differently.
I love the history lesson. Ashley, final thoughts from you. What do you think?
Well, I've dealt with a little of what Joshua does on the commercial side, but also I think a big one is we've had a lot of clients that were in contract to buy and wanted to back out, and all these issues are coming up. I think one of the bigger issues that will be litigated is force majeure. That's a clause in the law where it basically an act of God prevents you from performing. Usually it's a hurricane, earthquake. There are some cases that say that 9/11 was considered, a intervening cause of non-performance. So I think I'm super interested on seeing what the judges say about COVID-19. Is this an act of God, act of government? How will that let people out of contracts, out of performance? So I think that's the biggest one that will come down, that I think as lawyers, it makes us uncomfortable when there isn't any precedent on it. We just have to sit back and wait. So be patient with us as we let these rulings come out, and we'll keep everyone informed.
Can I just add on to what Ashley just said? There's a lot of terms that are being thrown around all the time. Force majeure, commercial frustration. In the commercial context, it's called commercial frustration. A lot of people will refer to it as force majeure, which would include commercial and others. A lot of people call it an act of God, but people who don't want to refer to God call it force majeure. It is essentially the same topic, but there are many different names for it. So I wouldn't spend a whole lot of time, if you Google it, trying to tease out the distinguishing marks between these, because people who have been studied for 500 years would have a tough time as well. I think Ashley would agree with me on that one.
Beautiful. Thanks, you guys. I'm seeing some other questions on foreclosure properties. Do we need cash to buy these properties? What's the system? How does that work? If you have questions, feel free to give me a call afterwards. I'm not necessarily a foreclosure expert, but I can definitely point you in the right direction. Some of these rules are going to have, there's going to be bank specific. There's a lot of rules that are just sort of going to be like a federal rules with foreclosure, but how they actually pan out with the auction and what you can do, what you can't do, because you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing. A lot of times cash is needed for these properties, and you don't get a very good inspection time. You get to go in to see it with everybody else, 30 people of auction there at the auction, 30 bidders, and everyone's just going to, pull out a number. So for those people that maybe have families that are in construction, some of these places are really run down. They want to just, buy it for land, take out the house and build it up again. There are a lot of different strategies for buying a foreclosed property, but a lot of pitfalls. So you want to know that you kind of line up correctly. Maybe work with a realtor that, I'm sure there's plenty in the virtual room today that have gone through and helped people buy foreclosed properties and work with it afterwards. So I think we are at our time limit, folks. Keith, are you back?
I am. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks,
So
everybody.
what I would suggest, Jonathan and Joshua, if you could go ahead and type in your information on the right-hand side, make sure that your phone number and your email address are readily accessible. Ashley and Elizabeth have already done that. So anybody that has some follow-up questions for these true professionals to find out a little bit more. And I know you know, with every headline that you see, you know, you'd like a quick and seamless answer. You know, are we really headed for a foreclosure meltdown? I mean, could have any of us predicted 2007 and 2008 crisis? You know, there was a handful of people that did actually know the information that were here in the Bay Area, but none of us knew about that until years later. And so it's really, this whole topic is to touch upon those factors for you to be able to disseminate some of the information from yourself and to see some avenues and some opportunities to not only help protect your clients, but ultimately to help build your business. So we do hope that you got some information from this presentation. We do hope that we added a little bit more information to your arsenal so that way you can make the best judgment for yourself and for your clients moving forward. But please reach out to these panelists. Please reach out, make sure that you get more information if you need it from each of them. We'll be honored to have you back, all of you, next month when we have a surprise. At this point, it's a surprise Brunch and Learn. We don't even know yet. So we will be letting you know shortly. You'll be getting an email, of course, and it will be posted not only at SCORE and Facebook and so forth. This recording should be up and available on SCORE's website in about a week or so. So keep an eye out for that, because then that way you can go back and some of the topics that were discovered, because again, we had to kind of pack in a lot of information in this hour time. So please review that, but obviously reach out to these wonderful panelists. So thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you all very much for in attendance today. God bless you all, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next time. See you soon.